Well, we return back to the sim racing world for episode 47 of Commentator's Corner, and my guest at this time is a certain man that I met on the ADAC Sim Racing Expo Professional Trophy. At that
Mm,
point, that was powered by SimRacing.GP. I've got Adam Eley with me, head of sales and marketing for SimRacing.GP. Welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
thanks for having me on. It's always nice to chat with you, whether it's virtually or in person.
Yeah, because we finally caught up in personam at last year's Sim Racing Expo at the Dortmund Messe, even despite what was going on behind the scenes with the little one.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And how is the little one doing? All good
Little one,
now, I hope.
little one's chaotic and standing up and not far away from first steps, and managed to say "mama" for the first time the other day. So he's absolutely flying. Thank you very much.
So let's first of all talk about commentary. Now, you
Mm,
came into commentary through one of the many sim racing leagues or communities that are part of the SimRacing.GP conundrum. That is, of course, Own It Racing. We've had Johnny Ashley on as a guest previously, and they just celebrated another anniversary. So kudos, Johnny, to him and the team, of course, which you were originally a part of before you moved on to SGP. But in some ways, I think you're still involved in some respects with regards to it indirectly. Yeah.
it's still pretty directly, actually. Johnny likes sort of putting levels and titles for the admins so that you know who's making the decisions, and I'm
Mhm.
still part of the executives team. So
Right.
yeah, still very much involved with Onid. It's not quite where I started,
Yeah.
either in sim racing or commentary. My first commentary gig in sim racing was actually with OTL Racing, that sadly no longer around. But
Mm.
Matt Wilmot at OTL gave me a shot there, and we had some good time on Race Room. But even before that, I did some commentary for some remote controlled car racing because I used to do that. So yeah, I've kind of dabbled in a bit of comms for donkey's years, really.
Yeah. So you've been on your travels in the month of January. You've been to the Autosport International Show, and of course, recently in Maastricht, we had Sim Formula Europe, run by
Mm.
Andy Marson and the team, which has a big presence through Overtake.gg. Of course, Rennie Butler's a previous guest on this show as well. What were your thoughts of the esports presence both at the Autosport show and then going to a 100% devout sim racing expo at Sim Formula Europe in Maastricht? What were the big differences that you noticed? Because it was a bit of a whistle stop tour. Let's be honest, Adam.
I, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm lucky that the Autosport is only about an hour away from my home, so that wasn't too bad. I'm going to be brutally honest about Autosport International. The last time I went was 2009. And the time that I went before that was 1997. I worked out because as a child, I remember winning a Mastercard Lola Formula One team keyring,
Right.
which I wish I still had because the team that never took part in a race. But yeah, Autosport Show has changed a lot since those years, and I think, to be frank, if I had have paid an entry fee as a punter, I would have been quite disappointed. Um, for me, from a business point of view, there wasn't a huge amount of esports presence there. There was some really good stuff though, so I spent some time with the guys from Race at Home, playing with their motion rig, which was interesting. Obviously, I spent some time with our friends at Motorsport UK, with their setup as well. Chatted with Cammy and Dan from Go for the Gap, and Caden that were there, and a few other people as well. But then there was a sim racing chat on the forum stage as well, which was interesting to listen to. And then that then meant that I could sit down and have a chat with some good friends after that as well. So Steve Worrell was there, and Dave Perel. Got a good chat with Mike Yao about a few things as well. Briefly spoke to Stephen Hood
Mm.
and a couple of the other guys from Motorsport Games, and even caught up with John Munro as well. So it was nice to have a good chat with some people at the show. But then obviously I went off to the Netherlands and Sim Formula Europe, and I didn't know what to expect really
Right.
in truth. Um, but it was lovely. It was really nice. It was very different vibe to the Dortmund Expo, because the Sim Formula Europe is like linked to this classic car show Into Classics, and if you imagine there's like this long, wide walkway that takes you from all of the transport locations through to the Into Classics show, that's where Sim Formula Europe was,
Mm.
and it had all these sort of separate rooms off the side, which then kind of somebody said it had the feel of a sim racing shopping center, and it kind of did
Right.
because like you had a Simucube room and then a Acertech room, and it sort of almost felt like these were their own little shop fronts.
Hmm.
Um, but I think from my point of view, it was a very relaxed show that allowed me a lot of time to catch up with people and to chat and talk through ideas. And sim racing as an industry is in an interesting place right now, so we all got to kind of chat about our thoughts and feelings of where it's at and what the future looks like, I guess.
Yeah, I think Sim Formula Europe has a different vibe to what the Expo did. I mean, for those that don't already know, I have been confirmed as one of the presenting team with Luke Crane, Nico Hillbrand, and also Matt Brand. But as I said in my chat on episode 44 to the man, the myth, the legend, the man with the best hairdo in sim racing, Danny Juicer, that it's not just 1 year. It's going to be.
Mine.
I was going to say you got the Duncan Goodhue Award, I think, my friend.
Thanks for that.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
I jest, I jest. No, but I think it's like it for me. To have that stability within the sim racing industry myself is quite a nice thing. But let's look at Sim Racing GP because there is a lot that has happened, and I think I'm going to go back to what you posted on Twitter on December the 21st last year, saying. And this is to do with the custom BOP that Sim Racing
Ah,
GP has finally. You guys have taken a lot of time, a lot of care, and looking at making sure that it's as best as it can be. When you went, we have taken a fair bit of flack for being later than others on this, but hopefully the wait will have been worth it. As the SGP implementation of BOP is really one of a kind, and the dev team have worked so hard on this. How long has it taken from sort of like gestation period to actually implementing it in late December last year?
um, it's difficult to put an exact time frame on it because we started work on it and then the project got interrupted by something else that we had to complete,
Mhm.
which was to do with practice servers that launched just before BOP. And sometimes you've got to balance different pressures
Yeah.
that there are. And so practice servers had to squeeze in, and then we returned to BOP, and our BOP implementation was not simple and straightforward because I think everyone knows the difference with SGP compared to other fantastic platforms is that we have the server infrastructure on the back end as well. So when a
Mm.
community has created a race, it then fires up the server for them, and that means that we've got to make sure that everything integrates end to end. But also, we're a multi-platform um, platform, a multi-platform platform. Yeah, I think you know what I mean. We're a multi-sim platform.
A multi sim, or a
Yeah.
multiverse platform, so to speak,
Yes. Yeah. So
compiling of different simulators.
yeah. So yeah, everyone was chasing, of course, a BOP in ACC, but we also wanted to implement it across AC and Race Room as well.
Hmm.
And then the final part was that we didn't want to restrict communities to a fixed BOP. We wanted to give communities the ability to create a completely custom BOP.
Mm,
So they could make it whatever they want. And of course, everyone talks about the LFM BOP, and kudos to them for doing what they did when they did and getting it out in the manner that they did. For us, we then wanted it so that a community like Onid could have the Onid BOP, which they do. The guys from Formula Student could do the same, or our friends at SimRace South Africa could have their own version of the BOP, and that was critical to our implementation.
mm.
It just meant that some of the editing tools were a little bit trickier to develop and things. So that was probably a bit of a politician's answer because I don't have an exact time frame on it, but they were some of the challenges that we faced along the way.
Yeah, I mean, coming over to the practice servers, obviously that had to take a little bit of precedence over the custom BOP that SGP have integrated. But then, you can switch off the practice servers on and off quite easily. It caters for AC, ACC, Race Room, and Automobilista too as well. And it really does help with regards to the communities being able to say, right, okay, let's say Owned Racing got 4 hours of Zandvoort coming up. Okay, guys and girls, you've got a 2 hour practice window. Here's when the server's going live, and here's where
Mm.
it's going off. That really has given another tool of flexibility for the communities to really sort of use to their benefit, haven't they?
It has. Again, it's a different implementation from the standard,
Yeah.
and you might be noticing a theme there. We don't sort of just follow what everyone else does, which is a good thing, but also does mean that sometimes we then have to explain things a little bit more.
Hmm.
Um, but we do it for a reason because I used to work for a company who had a tagline: "Always lead, never follow." I think those who jump on the bandwagon are too late. So what you do instead is you create your own path and you develop something different. Um, so with practice servers, the traditional approach is that somebody goes and pays for a practice server with a number of slots, and they just have it open and running 24/7,
Hmm.
which is great. But 90% of the time, that practice server sits there empty with not a single person in it because the whole community is asleep or it's too far away from the event or whatever it is. Now, if you've got a really good solution for that, then great. Our practice servers, you probably don't need them. Um, but for some of our communities, they wanted to just be able to fire up a practice server for a couple of hours at a time and be able to do that flexibly.
Hmm.
But also, if you're a driver, you kind of sometimes want to fire up a practice server just for yourself or just for you and a few friends. But the reason you want a practice server is you want to make sure it's the right track, the right cars, the right conditions that you can expect, and
Hmm.
everything like that. So, our system as a driver, you can fire up a practice server for an event as well. You
Hmm.
don't have to wait for the community to create one. So, it's designed to be very flexible, but again, a different solution.
I mean, as you said, like drivers wanting to use a server for themselves, could they implement an AI on that to have multiple cars against them? Like, say, if is that something that the SGP servers are able to cater for?
So none of the games that we have the full implementation with, and I use the word game very loosely, but have the ability to do that with the exception of AMS2.
Hmm.
That's the only one where you can add in AI to a multiplayer scenario. So it's sometimes it's limitations of the sim rather than our development.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is some of the reasons why Adam's on this show, folks, because I want to find out information, so thereby I can hear it from the horse's mouth, rather than sort of like trying to explain it and I get myself all crossed up and get it all wrong and then I get corrected, which is one of the best things about this show as well. Um, but big,
What I
but
will say though is that my speciality is sales and marketing. So if you ask anything too technical, then you may see steam come out of my ears.
no, that's fair enough. But let's talk about the big news. the British GT 2024 eSports Cup in association with the Intelligent Money British GT Championship and Motorsport UK. When you guys went, oh, we're really excited about this, and it's going to be a very, very condensed calendar. Of course, it's going to be,
Yeah,
we're going to have 6 rounds in total, which will include Alton Park, the traditional Silverstone 500, Donington Park, a trip over to Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps, everyone's favourite
y-
GT circuit these days.
and it's
Uh,
where British GT are going for their abroad race this year. So
yeah,
yeah,
they've been to Portimao on previous rounds as well.
they did do Zandvoort, I think, one year as well.
Stanford as well. And then we got Snetterton and Brands Hatch. When SGP got involved, it's great when you got people such as Paul Crawford from Motorsport UK, who's the esports manager, and I've met Paul. He's a great guy. He's very very switched on, but very very much about community input when it comes to having feedback for events. How big has the reception been for this British GT Esports Cup?
It's it's been really positive. I think the story of how it came about is quite amusing because I sat down with Paul at the expo in Dortmund,
Mm,
and we've been meaning to have a chat for a while. And they've done a lot of stuff on iRacing in 23.
yeah.
And my question was, "Hey, when are you guys going to do something on ACC?" And he said, "Well, what's your idea?" I said, "Well, let's do something that is similar to British GT, that's pro am,
Hmm.
that because that is different to do a pro am series. Use those British tracks and let's do something like that." And straight away, Paul sort of thought, that sounds good. But of course, being in the position that he has to be careful about certain things. So a couple of weeks later, he said to me, "Yeah, this is kind of flying a bit close to the sun of what British GT is. So I've actually had a chat with them just to say, are you okay with this?" At which point the guys at British GT went, "We're more than okay with this. In fact, let's turn this into the official British GT Esports Cup for this year, and work together on it." And they've been super supportive, as of Motorsport UK, in pulling things together. So we've got a great calendar. Um, we've got a great concept, I think, in having pro and am drivers paired together. Um, a mixture of different formats that closely mirror the real world.
Yeah,
The only thing that's missing from it, in my opinion, is the multi-class element that you get in real world British GT.
yeah.
But we said, look for the first year, let's just go GT3, test the waters, see what people think, and then ideally we'd love to throw in GT4 class as well, for next year.
Yeah, so I mean, the championship runs from February 3rd to March the 16th, with it being the Brands Hatch decider, not the Donington decider that many people have associated the Intelligent Money British GT Championship with. But yeah, I mean, it's great because as you said, there's a nice little variety where you've got 2 1-hour races on the opening round at Alton Park, and then the penultimate round at Snetterton. Silverstone 500 always is going to be around about 3 hours. So that's quite a good one. Donington Park, Spa-Francorchamps, and Brands Hatch, all 2 hour races. And
Mm.
having that pro am, it's very much like when you've seen like Jules Gounon and Ian Loggy being teamed up with the iconic D2 car last year, or Jules Gounon, I think it was, because Lello Marcello is now going to be running with Team WRT in WEC, and he's also going to run with Valentino Rossi at the Bathurst 12 Hours
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
BMW M4, which will be his first official works appearance as a factory BMW driver, which I think a lot of people are excited about. And the good thing is, at least, well, Lello is part Italian anyway, so the language barrier won't be a problem for him and Vale. But I think also the prizes that are up for grabs are quite good. It's 4 hospitality for the first place team, 4 hospitality tickets, so 2 tickets per driver to a British GT round of their choice, plus 4 grid walk passes. And then you got prizes for second and third place, but also Next Level Racing have come on board, and they're gonna be providing an HF8 haptic cushion, which will be awarded to a driver selected at random out of everyone that has competed in all 6 rounds. I mean, it's great when we see providers, hardware providers such as Next Level Racing, who are doing a lot of work behind the
Yep.
scenes. Let's be completely honest. They gave away 2 sims to the respective champions for AMX Global Season 3 quite recently. It's great where it's not just the fact that British GT have gone, let's work together on this. Motorsport UK have said, can we do it? They come to you guys to set everything up with regards to the ranking and the ranking systems that we all know on SimRacing.GP, which I feel is actually quite a good part of what you guys do at SGP, and it adds that real added value of that pro am teamwork that these drivers are going to have to do over those 6 rounds.
Yeah, and you're right about Next Level Racing, so thank you to them. My day started very early today. I was on the phone with Next Level at 7 o'clock this morning because they're based in Australia, so that's always good fun. And that's because something might be coming back again to SGP this year. I'll leave you to work out what.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always important, we feel, to try and offer what we call participant prizes. So what I mean by that is, it's all too easy to have prizes that are just purely for the fastest, and that's
Yeah.
great. But somebody like me that loves sim racing but absolutely sucks at it, I still want a chance to win something.
Yeah.
So to be able to pull somebody at random from the field of people that actually take part in all of the races is great. So all of that's really exciting. I know that some people will have seen that there was a little bit of negativity about the fact that there's no prize money,
Hmm.
but not everything is about prize money. This is your opportunity to become the British GT eSports champion,
Yeah.
and maybe the hospitality tickets aren't important to you. Fair enough, no problem. Nobody's forcing you to race. But if you want the prestige of potentially becoming the British GT Esports champion, working with an amateur driver along the way, and competing in some great races, then it's the championship for you. And there are still some spots available.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's 40 slots available at the time. Well, 40 slots actually being made available. And it'll be 2 drivers made up of one being a pro, one being an AM.
Yep,
And using the proprietary ranking system through SGP, each driver will have needed to have completed 5 races with SimRacing.GP on Assetto Corsa Competizione to actually have an accurate rank. And I think that's quite important because, yes, you said there was some negativity. I know that Niles Noyox was said his 2 cents. But
yep,
you know what? At the end of the day, we can agree to disagree with opinions. And
yeah,
and the thing is,
absolutely.
Niels has been in sim racing for such a long time, and his words, his opinion are very, very highly respected. But I think by giving the opportunity to teams to have that chance to win hospitality tickets, because if anyone doesn't already know, Intelligent Money British GT is part of SRO. So what are SRO doing with the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS? The SRO Pro Sim Series. As part of the GT World Challenge real life calendar. So
Yep.
when when it was announced, I was like, that's brilliant. That's not just Motorsport UK, it's not just British GT, it's not just Sim Racing GP, it's SRO, which to me showcases that SRO are doing, I think, one of the biggest organisations that are really, really pushing sim racing in the right way forward, aren't they?
They are, and they're a real world motorsport organization that get the future of sim racing. And it's interesting. I had this conversation with somebody at Autosport show. It wasn't necessarily about motorsport organizers. It was more about car brands, and when you see the different approaches to it, some want to just take over the world.
Hmm.
Some want to use it as a short term, this car's amazing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And other brands, and I'll use the example of Alpine, um, they're sort of in it for the long haul. So um, you know, you think back to when you were a kid and you drove on your first racing games.
Hmm.
There were always cars that you particularly wanted to drive. So for me, it was always I'd drive a Subaru Impreza in Forza whenever I had the chance, because I grew up in Essex, so I love the Scooby,
Yep.
and uh, one day I would love to own one, and that comes from the fact that I drove one all those years ago in Forza, and it's the same. I think brands like Alpine get that actually they're going to get some brand fans from people who enjoy driving their cars in a sim
Mm.
and things like that. So there's a lot of people taking a very different approach to sim racing, but SRO I think really understand it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing who's going to be on that grid because there's quite a few from the UK that we know of, like James Baldwin, Luke Whitehead, George Boothby. There's going to be. I'm sure that there's going to be a bumper grid, and I can't wait to see when it goes live. But I have to say, congratulations to you, Thomas and Dan, and all the team at SimRacing.GP for being on board with that. Which is, for me, I mean, for those that don't know, I've worked with SimRacing.GP on a multitude of product projects,
Yeah.
which includes SGP Rivals, powered by Intel, and also last year, along with that last year, was the Moser Racing Endurance Championship, powered by SimRacing.GP, where we had the SimRacing.GP podcast powered by Moser Racing, which was a great 6 round calendar. I really enjoyed it, even though that there were times that with some of the broadcasts I was overseas. I still remember doing with our good friend Mr. Jonathan Earl the last few hours of Spa-Francorchamps, and it was just so funny that I was in the Novotel in Charleroi, literally about an hour away from the circuit in real life, and I'd done a whole weekend of karting commentary, and we had this really, really good battle between Velikov and Culturale, and there was like 10 minutes to go, and they were swapping positions so much. I don't think I let Jonathan get a word in edgeways, and until Culturale went to the outside of Velikov, going through into the bus stop chicane with about 7.5 minutes to go. I mean, there's a lot coming through. With regards to rookie, sprint, and elite for SGP in terms of the racing, there's always quite a lot going on with you guys, isn't there? When it comes to providing previews on what's happening, like with IGT4 Championship on Friday nights, that kind of thing. There's a lot that you guys do to help the community sort of become a part of a lot of the racing that takes place with Sim Racing GP.
um, I'd like to think so. uh Communities are the heart of SGP, and maybe we don't shout about that enough
Hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's easy for our headlines to be British GT and working with Moser and Intel and Logitech and all that kind of stuff. Um, but the bread and butter, the day to day of SGP is not the activity that we put together. It's what our communities put together.
Hmm.
And I like to think I understand that um, in a fairly unique way, having been a community manager with Onid before I came to SGP and still being involved in that with them. I also have my own organisation, Racing Stronger, which has a community on SGP as well. Um, and you know, I cannot underestimate just how important.
Hmm.
Sorry, I can't overestimate just how important communities are to SGP, and we're blessed with some phenomenal communities and some very, very committed owners and organisers. that makes SimRacing.GP tick the way that it does.
I always like the community aspect of sim racing because it really showcases that. I mean, the proof was in the pudding on the Aztec community, the Aztec community trophy for 2023 with the Sim Racing Expo, whereby it was an opportunity for communities to be given the chance to say, right, okay, nominate a couple of drivers. We'll put them head to head with everybody else, which I thought was really, really nice because we got to see some talents that you wouldn't normally see in like bigger competitions where there were prizes up for grabs, there was prize money up for grabs, but it was just a case of throw members of the community into a melting pot and see what happens. And I mean, when myself and Nico Hilbrand did the commentary for the final two rounds at Valencia, which has become one of my favourite ACC tracks, to be honest with you, unlike Dan Terry's favourite, Watkins Glen, which,
Or Bathurst, yeah,
yeah,
one of the two.
but it was quite nice because we had two different cars and, excuse me, I'll start that again because we had Valencia, but we had two different cars. We had the BMW M2, the Cup car, and then
Mm,
we had the Porsche 911.
mm,
Which and it was quite funny when I was doing the introduction on stage when I said on this competition the GT3 one size fits all doesn't apply here, and it was really good to see that how some drivers were able to master both of them quite quickly, and then there were some that would do better in the BMW than they would do in the Porsche. So you got two very different cars to try and get used to. And that's what I love about community, that you can really, really sort of mix things up and just say, right, okay, throw them in the pot, see what happens. And sometimes you get carnage, sometimes you get absolutely great racing. And we got the latter on both races on the Friday for the community trophy that Andre and the team at Aztec Sim Sport have, were the title sponsor for of. And it just
yeah.
for me it was quite nice that some of the drivers that, as I said, don't get mentioned in the bigger competitions had a bit, had the spotlight put on them, and I thought it was quite nice, to be honest with you.
Uh, absolutely. And I'll give you probably a slightly contentious viewpoint on the future of sim racing.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think esports is the future of sim racing.
Hmm.
Um, there'll always be a place for it as a marketing showpiece for sim racing,
Yeah.
but it's not the future. The future of sim racing lies in our racing communities,
Hmm.
because if you are a brand, so take Acertech or SimuCube or any other brand, um, you don't sell your products to the 1% of drivers that make up the esports grid. You sell your products to the 99% of drivers that make up casual racers, at home racers, community racers. Um, and for them, they're going to get to the point where they need to be as involved in the community side as much as they are esports. And a lot of brands are starting to do that already. And we're trying to help them with that. But also, communities, and to your point, communities can try things. Communities can be nimble and flexible. They can do things instantaneously.
Yeah.
If they decide, right, it's 6:10 on a Thursday evening, actually, we haven't got anything going on tonight, but I fancy driving some transit vans around the Nordschleife on AC and seeing if any of my mates want to come and join me.
Yeah.
They can jump on SGP, set up a race for it, and people can sign up to it, and away they go.
Hmm.
They can do that. And I use Onid as an example only because I know so much about it from being on the inside. Um, a couple of times a year they do a social race, and I think one of them was on the Nordschleife, which was the transit vans versus the Ferrari F2004 F1 car.
Oh God,
Put
that's
those
a
two things on the track at the same time in a multi-class event, and it's absolute fun, chaos, and carnage.
yeah.
Um, but communities can do that. They can try things. They don't have to worry about their shareholders and their their sponsors and things like that. So I'm very passionate about communities and how much they are the future of sim racing.
Yeah, I mean, apart from that, obviously LAN events. You know, over COVID, we're all confined to quarters, so to speak, locked up like animals in cages. But and then, of course, the LAN events took a big dive. Let's be
Mm,
completely honest with you. But now that we're seeing such as events with, like, say, ESLR1 and Rennsport, okay, we're not going to talk. I'm not going to talk in detail about F1 esports because there has been a lot of problems with regards to F1 esports. But then, like Sim
obviously.
Racing Expo, Sim Formula Europe, there's more LAN events now coming out, which is showcasing that sim racing still has a place in a LAN arena, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, and there. But just because it's a LAN arena doesn't mean it has to be top level esports.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you have got an esports event taking place,
Yeah.
then the rigs aren't going to be in use 24/7 over the event. So why not use the time in between those races for communities to come and showcase what they do as well, and um, you know watch this space on that thought. But yeah, there's definitely opportunity to do more LAN events and more showcase pieces. And
Hmm.
esports won't go away.
Yeah.
It'll still be there. It'll be the shop front, if you will. But the driving force behind the industry as a whole will be casual racers, community racers, slow coaches like me.
Hmm. I mean, when you guys were at Insomnia last year, before obviously the Intel UK operation came through, like the cooperation with Intel, of course, Chill Blast and Tactus have now come on board as announcing a technical partnership back in October of last year. Things are going from strength to strength with regards to new partnerships, and sometimes that's always quite helpful, isn't it? Where you know that there are partners or firms out there that go, well, hang on a second, they're doing something different here. What is it like from a sales and marketing perspective within your role, Adam, when you're getting when these big brands are sort of saying, yeah, hey, we want to work with you. Let's try and see if we can do an association. Then, of course, SGP rivals with Intel came along, which was a great three events within a week, three different platforms where I was on all three broadcasts, and the final one I was actually on. It was a GT3 and GT4 multi-class, and I was in my hotel room in Belgium again, which was quite funny. Anytime anything SGP happens and I'm involved on commentary, most of the time I'm at home or I'm somewhere else in the world, more predominantly Belgium. You know.
Yeah, no, I mean to go back to your point about the partnerships. It's what I came on board with SGP for is to try and bring about some of those partnerships. My background is in sales for uh, the entirety of my career,
Mm,
always in consumer tech and consumer electronics. Um, I moved out of that world a while ago, and I did a little bit of moonlighting with SGP during the first Logitech G Challenge, and I remember saying to Steve and Dan at the time that actually I was really impressed by what I saw behind the scenes, and that I thought there was an opportunity for SGP to do more work with brands that want to work in the sim racing space. And
mm,
we sort of then got talking about it, and eventually I came on board to help with that. But it's been, I shouldn't say this because they'll go and they'll go and say that I've got it too easy, but it's been one of the easiest sells that I've ever had
yeah.
because what we are, and again, I don't think we do enough telling people about this, but what we are is we're a group of sim racers. Thomas is a sim racer. Thomas, the managing director, he's very quiet. He's a lovely guy,
Yeah.
um, but he's a sim racer at heart, and he created SGP out of a need as a racer. You know, Dan is obviously a racer himself and has been around in sim racing for a long time. I drive. In fact, you know, I've got to turn my rig on in a minute because I've got racing tonight on AMS2, and yeah, so we're all sim racers, and that means that uh, you know, we're very passionate about providing the
Mm.
right product, but also about working with brands who want to support sim racing as an industry. So yeah, it's been easy to sell partnerships
Yeah.
that are based on passion and desire. But also I think it's been very eye opening to see that brands are starting to understand that sim racing is a thing now.
Mm.
And actually, we've worked with more and more gaming brands of late that see that sim racers aren't necessarily gamers. And it's
Right.
a whole new market for them because I think it's fair to say that the majority of sim racers are motorsport fans predominantly. You
Yeah.
know, the only games I play are sim racing titles, and it's the same for a lot of us. Most of us are just, you know, too old or too fat in my case to ever fit in a race car. So this is the closest we can get to it. Probably
Uh,
too old in my case now as well. So
that's a very very fair point. But Adam, I just have to say, buddy, thank you so much for jumping on. It's been a real good chat. So, folks, please don't forget to follow SimRacing.GP. The links will be on the respective videos or the respective video here on the Commentators Corner YouTube channel, YouTube podcast playlist on my channel, and also on our relevant audio partners, including Downforce Radio, the nation's motorsport station, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Adam, any final words of? Can you give us a little teaser of what we could see on SGP, or is it a case of watch this space?
there will be a GT3 and a GT4 championship with uh, a brand. There will be another brand delivering a single make championship. We have the potential for a very big partnership, which I'm sat here crossing my fingers over happening, which you know would provide us with some resources to go and do even more development. Yeah, we've got a lot of exciting stuff happening this year, but of course it is a big year for sim racing as well. Lots of new titles coming out, and
Mhm.
we're fully abreast of that and ready to be in and amongst that. But as a closing thought, if I could, I just want to say a big thank you to the communities that have supported SGP over the 3 years plus that we've been going. Um, because you know, without you, we wouldn't be where we are now. Same goes for our drivers as well. So thank you to everyone who's used us, and if you haven't used it, then come and give it a go. You know, it's free to join. It's free to join any communities you want and jump in and see what you think.
Brilliant, Adam. Thank you so much for your time. Well, folks, that's it for episode 47 of Commentators Corner. More great guests to come along in the not too distant future. So, as I always say, if in doubt, flat out. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.